Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with the Nerdarchy crew.
Ryan.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
And today we're going to discuss how to reskin your monsters, or basically anything in your D&D or RPG game. So, now, I just recently ran a game through the one-shot group through Google Hangouts. And essentially, I didn't use a single monster the way it was written from the book. I mean, I may have used some of the abilities, or all of the abilities, but, no one actually knew which monsters I was using, because I used descriptions like, it looks like an inside-out bear, or, I completely changed the fluff or the flavor of the monster. When I used the Ogre Magi, I described it how I wanted it to look. It looked like a humanoid creature with, purple eyes and an amethyst crystal horn coming out of its head. Wearing crystalline armor with pale, dead white looking flesh with black veins running through it, wielding a glaive of crystal. Because I had this weird crystal theme going on in that particular adventure.
And so they were reading people's auras and checking their toxin levels and all this other hippity-dippity stuff. Yeah.
New age, very new age.
Very new agey. Well, no, I mean, but what does is it tremendously would mitigate any potential metagaming, because if I recall correctly, your inside-out bear that you described, you statistically use the owlbear.
I did,
but not a damn person at the table would have any idea of that, because they're like, "What the hell is that?"
what does a bear look like when it's inside? For that matter, and I didn't go into great detail describing what it looked like. I just said it's as if you would imagine a inside-out bear. So just using that kind of description, I'm sure each player at the table in their own mind had a different idea of what this monster looked like. The only thing that, other than that I did, is the fact that, when it would step, it would leave blood prints from the paws.
Creepy. Very creepy.
Yeah, it was definitely a creepy encounter. I was actually in that game, and, normally I am one who, when someone says, "Oh, this is blah, blah, blah description," I will either mentally or sometimes physically be like, "Oh yeah, that's such and such," and sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm wrong.
So physically, such and such. Does that mean you leave the room real quick, get dressed up as the such and such, and come back?
He does have a lot of lurking.
No, he whips out he must whip out the monster manual and flip through it a little bit.
No, I mean, there's sometimes I say
verbally,
verbally,
as opposed to mentally. Yeah.
Talking out loud.
I did say physically say.
Okay.
He turns into it.
I was in that encounter, and in no way, shape, or form did I think, "Oh, well, that's this monster, or that's this monster." I was like, "Well, they must have just made something up," and off I went. So that was very well done.
Even the Ogre Magi, which I used their stereotypical ability to use Cone of Cold on you guys, no one said, no one called out the monster.
That's an Ogre Magi.
Yeah, through all of the whole session of that particular game, unlike when I ran the Maze of Mandoon, where I kept having the monsters yelled out to me.
Nice.
And no, not online, at our physical table.
Yeah.
So, Nate, you have some experience with reskinning as well.
Yeah, recently for my newbie group, the 50-50 guy-girl game, they're fighting mephits. And I described them more as gremlins rather than mephits, because I actually at the time when I first used them, I forgot exactly what kind of small, annoying elemental creatures were called. So I just said, "Oh, they look like gremlin-y things with hideous faces." So no one really knew, and they came out of their elements. So it was more like the fire taking shape, or animating some wood, or the water turning slowly into this hideous-looking, spiny ice demon.
Gremlin thing that was in the bathtub with the half-orc female.
Yeah, with the half-orc female. And she's still disturbed by bathing.
Although you do have the advantage of having new players, so
yes.
You could actually said what it was, and they'd be like,
Yeah.
But I mean, the description's cool, and part of a role-playing thing, the character being a half-orc, might get a little phobic now every time they go to bathe. Is that gonna happen again?
Yeah, so it made for good interaction, not using the actual names, because then they, I'm curious, I'm gonna look this monster up. Well, there's no gremlin in the monsters manual, so it worked out just changing the name for it. And last night I made kind of an invisible stalker-esque monster. Just
Invisible Christopher Walken?
No. Just lowered. I just halved an air elemental. Like totally halved what the air elemental said in the book and made it invisible. But it was wielding a magic sword, so you could perceive it. DC 15 or higher, you could start to see the outside edges of what this thing was because it was actually like controlled wind in that pattern. So, and as it was getting wounded, it was becoming more and more visible as it was losing its hold on its form. So there was kind of like that element to it, but I just put that in there, and I was like, oh yeah, half air elemental sounds fine. Basically, Nothic strength, which they already took care of one previously, but I had other elementals around bothering them. I had a like an earth-based method that was a little stronger, and it came out of a portal that kind of looked like a mosaic tile of mica and a bunch of different stones and things, and it just kind of pressed out like one of those pin things that you can make like a hand and it kind of press it. That's how I described it, kind of like pressing out of that and taking the shape of a humanoid form.
Very
like
cool.
like a clay doll with all these different mosaic tiles stuck to it.
Now you mentioned the Nothic. My game started with a Nothic, which basically they look like humanoid creatures with a single eye, a mouthful of sharp teeth, and they kind of have like frog-like skin, right? So that was the only monster that was identifiable from my game, except for I made it huge. Big enough to pick up two, medium-sized creatures and walk off with it, and they're usually medium. Right. And then, I had, basically this chaos effect following it, where it was mutating things and summoning chaos monsters. But
and talking mushrooms.
And talking mushrooms, as the case may be. Basically, I was going to use the Nothic stats and take either like a hill giant or an ogre and kind of mash them together. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want its abilities to be that much more powerful, but I wanted it to be able to womp on things physically and take a beating. And when I actually made that creature for the encounter, by made I mean I just decided I was going to use it because I really didn't do much prep for that game. But if it came to a conflict, I wanted it to be physically imposing. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it was going to be a role-playing conflict, but you never know what your players are going to do.
Right.
You never really know.
They could take it a totally different way, and you might have to smack a few of them around, slay them, and then they can run for their lives.
So, there is no, when you're talking about reskinning, there is no hard and fast rules for it. Really, but a lot of it can be done on the fly. It makes your game better because you keep your players off balance. And nothing kills your DMing than when your players are sitting there and metagaming every monster that you use.
Yeah, and they're even if they're unconsciously doing it, they just know what to expect from this monster. So even if it's supposed to be damn scary, it's just not.
And I think that's one of the things that hurts a lot of groups over time is as players become more familiar with the monsters, the DM feels more like he doesn't have to describe them. So it makes for lazy DMing. That's actually a direct correlation to how your players have been responding to your feedback over however long you've been gaming.
Now, with that same Nothic that you used and you manipulated, I used the Nothic straight out of the book, but I made it more stone-like. So it was more like brittle stone and spiny like it is in the book, and it was kind of, it didn't have an attack based on those spines, but its claw attacks are really vicious against a first level party anyway. So it was a deadly encounter, but at the end they basically hacked its head off. But what happened was the eye, which was stone-like, like the rest of this Nothic, broke out, and then it rolled, and rather than be like a jelly squishy thing, it's actually like some kind of like scrying sphere. So Sorcerer picked that up right away. I didn't even describe it as a magic item. I just said the eye gets dislodged, it gets disconnected from the skull, and it starts rolling down the hill. And she went yoink right away, like, oh, this is neat.
Yeah, sweet.
And I also described it as when it was necrotically damaging the mephit it was eating, that they came upon it doing that. It was basically evaporating it with its eye and then breathing in the vapors, the magic vapors of the creature, rather than just, I'm doing a necrotic damage at you.
So, that's just a really light reskinning of the visuals of the monster.
Yes.
But, that sometimes that's all you need, especially for those, those hardcore metagamers made out of stone. That's not it won't even register in our brain because it's not made out of stone.
They thought it was a fire monster because I said there's wavy, what looks like heat rays rippling towards you when it hit you. So I described it as like some kind of magic destructing.
Feels like burning.
Yeah, it feels like burning. Well, dying cells, burning cells. What's the real big difference there? It still hurts.
Yeah. And then another thing too is like you can give things like a fly speed, a swim speed or whatever. Like an aquatic rust monster. Like he's just, like you have like the bugs of the sea, like lobsters and crabs or whatever. Just give
him some flippers.
Just give it some
crustacean.
flippers.
Give it some paddles.
Yeah. There you go.
There's nothing more to set your parties off than to just visually change what's there. It winds up giving you the pages of the monster manual become infinite, because anytime you want to just change something, you can do it, and your players might be just set on edge.
Winged kobolds totally do a flying monkey.
Yeah. Well, or I mean, there was also in past editions there was the Erd. That was like they were breeding.
Erd's in this one.
They're back.
Okay, they're back. So they were just like or you could make them be flying monkeys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Last night I used a giant constrictor snake, and I had to talk. Yeah. So even little things like that, while the animal from the book doesn't talk, it's not intelligent enough. But I had to harass the Dragonborn player for working with humans.
Nice.
So you can easily do things like that to put the players on edge. And it's not just monsters that you can reskin. You can reskin whole dungeons and modules, which I've done with the Maze of Mandoon. I've run it twice, but both times I've run it, the premise is kind of the same, but I've changed the aesthetics, I've changed some of the encounters, and made a completely new adventure out of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do that a third time at Philly Game Con.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Getting more mileage.
And I feel I feel like how much you've changed it in each of the two renditions of it. I could play that game twice and still have a unique experience in it based on that. So
well, that's kind of the idea. That's not only is the premise behind the adventure is that it keeps changing, but from the game design is I want it to be like that. I want people to be able to run through it more than once, and most of the elements are changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could just make different modules of encounters and like just slot them in and out based on party level and this and that.
Or if you really want to screw with people, use the same encounters but completely change how they work.
Right.
Because if they've encountered it in another game or they saw it on the internet, they have a preconceived notion of how it's going to go. But then you've completely flopped things.
But when you enter this room, the gravity is actually reversed, and you're now walking on the ceiling, and it's completely disorienting or whatever.
You can do it with magic items. Just because something's a staff doesn't mean you couldn't turn it into a wand or a rod. Just because something is a rod or a staff doesn't mean you couldn't make it a miscellaneous magic item, a wondrous item.
Yep. Or a mace.
Or a mace.
An actual melee weapon.
So there's definitely room. There's wiggle room in the game for you to really just screw with things, so your players have no idea what you're doing.
So the key point to remember is you're the DM. You can change what you want when you want.
Rules. Yeah.
How you want.
And get your players off guard.
Change the energy types or whatever that something does.
Just making a little twist or a little change.
Yeah, it shuts down your metagamers, and it just makes it a more interesting game. I don't think most people really want a metagame. I mean, there are some. But for the most part, people want to be surprised and they want to explore new things. And unfortunately, just because you've been playing the game for so long, it becomes harder and harder to do that because the fantastic becomes mundane.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that us as humans have a built-in reward system for recognizing something, seeing a pattern in something. So we're like, oh, that's a kobold. Yep. You're just automatically doing it in your mind. You're not even like, I wonder what this is. Your mind just says, hey, that's a kobold. I gave you the answer.
Right, but then the problem as a DM is you get that enough times, and you're like, why go through the trouble of explaining the kobold? Mm-hmm. I described the kobold. I'm halfway through the description. They're like, six of your 5 players are going, kobold. That's right. A 6-1 just pops up to tell you it's a kobold and it leaves.
Yeah,
right. This is not a test. Yeah. Please don't give answers.
Well, I mean, I guess as players too, the better thing is just keep your mouth shut if you know what it is, but react as your first level character, not your 12th level intellect character. That's
Well, the other problem too is say you have new players at that table at that game who don't actually know what it is. You're actually robbing them of part of the experience.
Right.
Yeah, whether it's intentionally.
It's like going up to little kids and telling them there's no such thing as Santa Claus.
Yes.
Yeah, like
and,
really.
and
which is very mean. And if there's little kids watching, this is absolutely Santa Claus.
Yeah, totally.
And it also, they don't know what a kobold is because they're new players anyway. So you're just making them feel stupid as a player that's experienced and like, oh yeah, it's a kobold.
Isn't
like,
that the point of the game
to
be better than other people at the table? Isn't that the whole point of RPGs? I mean, really.
Last night I also reskinned an air method as a thundercloud, and it was just a sentient little thundercloud. I doubled its.
I'm thinking of Mario Brothers right now. Anybody else?
Was there a turtle riding inside?
It shot lightning bolts in a straight line. The lightning bolts only did 2d4, and you had to save for half. But it was still, it was low challenge, but it still had that tremendous effects that scared the hell out of everybody once they saw people getting hit with lightning bolts and shocking grasp. So,
that would be kind of scary, being chased by
and all I did, I just said,
cloud.
well, and air method's this, and it's got this many hit points. Well, I'm just going to make it a little bit more XP. So I doubled XP, gave it some powers, and that's it. So
score
and made it a thundercloud, an angry thunderstorm.
So with that, I think we fully reskinned this video.
That's right. Yeah.
So you guys can like, comment, share, and even subscribe.
You can check us out on nerdarchy.com. Lots of great articles over there.
You can come hang out with us on Facebook.
And you can join the conversation on Reddit.
Till next time,
stay nerdy.